So we can start. Uh, so let's start this my way, like on YouTube. So, for and this is a very special moment for me because it's like my first workshop after 10 years or so. So it's been a pretty long time, so I feel a little rusty, and also, I'll be honest, pretty nervous about everything. So let's start on an easy note, and I want to ask you a question, a warm-up question. Does any one of you know how much does a polar bear weigh? Enough to break the ice. So now that the ice is broken, we can start with the main theme. And so what's it gonna be about? It's gonna be about old wood with peeling paint effects. Now, first, you might be asking, like, where I'm gonna use something like this in my modeling. Well, for example, dioramas are a perfect place for that because you have old barn doors, windows, anything. On tanks, not so much, unless they're like marine tanks from the Pacific when they were where Shermans were up armored with wooden planks. But also on boats, like old wooden boats, these techniques are excellent. And the coolest thing about them is that before I learned how to do these effects, I had no idea how the pros were doing that. It was like magic to me. And actually, if you see me surprised today, I'm genuinely surprised because to this day, when it works out the way it should, I'm always surprised. And the thing is, we'll break it down into two chapters because we are going to use like two separate mediums, oil paints and acrylics. That's why I have two pieces here, because I prepared this one at home, because it is important to leave the oil paints to harden up for a day or two before we proceed with the next techniques. And this already looks pretty good, right? Um, and the coolest thing is that it's super easy to achieve this old aged wood effect. All you need for that, and now we are finally getting started, is three oil paints. And it's these ones. So basic black oil paint, some grayish tone, and something that's a little bit sandy, something yellowish like sand. These three oil paints, nothing else. Of course, wood has lots of variation in real life. You can have almost black wood or like bluish gray wood, or sometimes almost white. So it all depends on your reference images and the effect you're trying to achieve. But this, for me personally, works like this universal base coat for aged wood. And I already prepared my oil paints while I was drinking coffee about 2 hours ago. It's always important for me to let the oil paints seed the excess oil on a piece of cardboard because they will dry faster and they will dry to a matte finish. Otherwise, you're risking that they might be glossy or they might not dry up at all. And that's no good. So, right now, I'm going to replicate this same thing. And the fun part is that it's basically like when you're blending oil dots on your tanks or airplanes or whatever. But it's much easier and more fun. So for blending, I'm gonna use fast dry thinner, but any type of enamel thinner works for this. And don't be shocked when you start questioning what I'm doing, because the funniest part about the whole technique is that you need to be messy on purpose. So we are gonna do it like this. Just random dots of oil paint. And I usually like to start with the lightest tones and then finish with the black one in limited amounts. And this is really, I know it might look weird, but this is actually the best way to do it. Like just slap the thick oil paint right onto the plastic. And actually, I forgot one very important thing before we started. Uh, these pieces of plastic that I have here, I made them myself very quickly from evergreen sheets. But this works on even on those wooden pieces you find in model kits. If they have some basic wood grain texture, then it's all good. But I like to make it myself, and it's super easy. You just need a metal wire brush, and you just scrape the plastic along the wood grain, and then you make the planks with the scriber. That's it. But what's important is to have a white base coat. And I just like to spray the textured plastic with basic Tamiya flat white. Two important things. It needs to be white and it needs to be flat, matte. So the paint has some grip where you can bite into the plastic, into the paint texture. That's important. So now that we have them here, I can start blending them. And even the blending part is very fun. I'm using a large flat brush, and this job is very quick. Like when I was preparing this one, I had it ready in 4 minutes. And all you need to do is just follow the wood grain texture and just blend the paints like this, up and down. Of course, it's important to cover the entire area, and depending on how much pressure you use, the effect will be different. And it's completely okay if some of the white base coat is showing through. It just adds to the color variation. So we go like this, finish down here. But again, it's quite important to make long brush strokes so you don't end with these steps in the middle. So again, I will start at the bottom and just drag it all the way up. And that's basically it. That's the first step. That's the first part of the process. You can see that the effect is pretty similar, but also different. And again, that's a nice thing. It's variation, it's the amount of paint you use, and how much you blend it. And I know it might seem interesting to push the effect even further, but we don't have to because this is just the most basic base coat that we are using. So, as I said, we need to let this dry for at least a day if we want to proceed further. So now I'm gonna put this aside and work on this one, which I prepared at home. For now, we won't need oil paints, but we'll get back to them. And I'm gonna switch to acrylic paints. And with acrylics, and generally with these peeling paint effects on wood, all that is important is chipping fluid. We're gonna do a lot of stuff with chipping fluid. So I'm gonna put it on my wet palette. And also, the brand of the chipping fluid doesn't really matter. I like to use this one from VMS, but also AK chipping fluid works really well. Those are the two that I tried. And we are going to start with the actual peeling paint. So I chose the red and yellow, so our flanks will be red and yellow because these colors contrast really well. One thing I don't like about these acrylics sometimes is that they dry up here and then you can't push the paint through. So I'm gonna do it this way. I'm just gonna grab it like this. I usually use a needle when I'm home to open up the bottle again, but I forgot to bring it with me. But it's okay, we'll figure things out. So that's the second color, and now the yellows. And we'll see, yellow paint is really fun to work with, especially when you start layering it. But we'll get there. So we have the different tones. And for now, we are going to work with these. So the first important step is to cover the wooden piece with chipping fluid. Oh, the first step is to add some tap water. I forgot about that. So I like to have it in these small pools, one for each color. And now we can start. So, chipping fluid, I'm gonna apply it with a paintbrush. That's probably the most magical part of the whole process. And again, following the wood grain texture, like this. And chipping fluid behaves differently if you apply it with an airbrush or with a paintbrush. With paintbrushes, it usually leads to these large, flaky sort of looking chips, and that's very good because that's exactly what we want on these old planks, because that's how paint feels from old wood. And yeah, we have pretty good coverage. The unfortunate thing right now is that the chipping fluid needs a while to dry before we proceed. So what should I do in the meantime? Um, we're gonna see. Yeah, actually, this is the paintbrush that I'm gonna use for the application. So let me just clean it up real quick. Okay, so you know what? We'll also have some white paint on the wood. So I'm gonna drop it here. And the most important thing when you are brushing acrylic paints on top of chipping fluid is that you cannot reactivate the fluid while you are applying the paint. And the way to avoid that is to use thick paint straight from the bottle, basically. And so it's sort of, the application is something between dry brushing and just slapping it like there's no tomorrow. So yeah, it's slowly drying, but it's not quite there yet. So I don't know. In the meantime, anyone has any questions or something? Nothing. That's not very good. Uh, yeah, that's really the only thing. Usually when I'm home, I think other modelers also warned about that. Yeah, like you can speed things up even when paint is drying. You can either use hair dryer or just air from your airbrush. Uh, Hair dryer, I would advise against it when it comes to chipping fluid because the heat can change the proportions of the fluid. So the results might be different. I just try to avoid it. I didn't do any crash testing myself, but usually air is enough. Um, I can try blowing on it, but it sort of works. Or we can try applying the paint straight onto the drying chipping fluid, like for science, and we'll see where it leads us. And the cool thing is that we are not going to cover the entire piece, so let's start with white. And we will have one plank that's going to be painted white. And again, long brush strokes like this, and we're pretty much done. I'm gonna clean my brush and switch to the orange. Again, I'm grabbing the thick paint, slightly unloading the brush on the tops, and again, long brush stroke, like that. But the fun doesn't end there. Another one, and again, if you don't cover the entire thing, like yeah, sure, you can cover it up with multiple brush strokes, but this already is like a small roadmap for the peeling paint, so that's completely fine. One more. And the cool thing is that you can mix these paints together for more variation. Actually, that's one rule I try to follow most of the time, that each plank should be slightly different. just for that subtle variation. So let's say like this, and we'll leave the others without any paint. And what you can also do, and this is probably one of my favorite parts of this application, is that you can layer these different paints on top of each other. So once again, I'm grabbing the red one and I'm unloading my brush because now we need to start dry brushing. Maybe that was too much. And I'm gonna apply it on top of this one, but in a very irregular way. Just a very subtle variation. Like that. And we're done. Or we can do the same thing on the red plank. Like these basically just simulate some remnants of old paint. You know, when you layer paints on top of wooden planks. So maybe like this. No, not that. Not very nice. More like this. That's better. Like that. And you might be thinking like, this doesn't look very good. Like what's going on? And but the sloppy application is part of the process. Like that's the magic. Like I tried airbrushing them, but the results were too monotonous, too perfect. And now we will chip the paint down. And I'm thinking which paintbrush I should use. Maybe I'll need the same one that I used for the application. So I'm gonna make sure it's perfectly clean. But to reactivate the the paint, the chipping fluid, a large flat brush again works really well. And what we're going to do is follow the direction of the wood grain. And I like to focus on one plank at a time. Now it's the moment when magic happens. So if I'm surprised, I'm genuinely surprised because I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. So don't be mad at me if it doesn't work. We'll figure something out. Okay, let's start with this one. So I'm just going to apply the water. And the paint isn't completely dry yet, but we'll see what happens. Ah, it works. It's very subtle. No, that's too much. That's too much. That's not cool. That wasn't supposed to happen. But I'm gonna fix it. Much better now. It's sometimes these small accidents that make your heart race, and then you realize, like, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. Like, I'm glad it actually happened. You know? Which one seems drier? The white plank. This should be better. Again, I'm just gonna moisten it slightly. And now with very little pressure, see how it's peeling down? Second one. This one looks pretty dry as well. So we will do that one. Oh yeah, this one is turning out really nice. And the wood grain helps us to make these chips, so it's really important to have nice texture. So even if you have if you have some wooden planks in your model kit and it has some of the molded wood texture, it's always very easy and doesn't take a lot of time to just take your hobby blade and add a few more scrapes to enhance the texture. It will help you a lot when you're doing the actual painting. Yeah, the more time I'm leaving the paints to dry, do you see it well on the projector?
Yes.
Like the chips are becoming really nicely defined. And basically, the whole magic of this technique is to use chipping fluid on everything. Like I was painting planks of relatively fresh wood, like more yellowish wood. And again, I use the same oil paint base coat. And instead of these orange and white or whatever paints, I just use sandy paints, like paints of fresh wood. And I chip them on top of this old faded effect. And the results were pretty nice. So it's always about using chipping fluid on everything. There we go. And the most enjoyable part is when you start to layer them on top of each other. Now I'm sort of just doing a basic cleanup, removing the excess chipping fluid so I don't layer it too much. And maybe doing some minor cleanup on the chip parts as well. You can also remove most of the paint or all of it if you try hard enough. Okay, there we go. So, I mean, I don't know if you see it the same way as I do, but I was planning to make this like just the first layer of chipping, but I sort of like it. Like it looks pretty good already. But no, that wouldn't be as fun. We are gonna apply another layer of chipping on top of this, and I'll try to make it like you have an old barn door, which was originally nailed together from old planks, and some of them were painted orange, some of them were white, and then when it was done, it was all repainted with a layer of yellow paint. And the yellow paint is chipping, showing the old wood and also the old paint. But first, again, this is the boring part. We need to wait until the water evaporates. And I don't know how the process works, but each time I try this at home, I'm surprised that I don't need to seal these chipping effects with a layer of varnish. I don't know why. It just, when it dries, the paint is like it's locked in. I can apply another layer of chipping fluid on top of it, do another round of chipping, and the paint stays there. Like, I'm hoping it will work the same way today. If not, that's not going to be very cool, but we'll see. Um, and of course, I think this is understandable. Like, the results are not going to be absolutely 100% perfect because this is done very quickly and it's live, and you know how it goes. But I'm trying my best, I'll be honest with you. Okay, so we have more paint now, and I don't know. I guess we'll just see. I still have some water right here, or maybe I can try drying it up with something. See how this towel works for it. Yeah, that worked like a dream. Like, who would have thought, right? Okay, so let's apply another layer of fluid. You can maybe see that some of these planks are still shiny. That's the remnant of the unactivated chipping fluid, but we don't care about that today. I'm just gonna apply another layer on top of it. I guess the second coat of chipping is gonna be really brutal. So like this, and actually, this is a sort of personal preference of mine, but I never enjoyed chipping fluid when I was applying it with an airbrush because for me it was always pour the chipping fluid into the airbrush, spray it, flush it out, clean the airbrush, add the paint, apply the paint, and again, flush the airbrush, clean it up. Like there was just so much cleanup that the whole process was boring for me. So the first time I tried applying the fluid with a paintbrush, it was like a total game changer. I mean, I wouldn't recommend brushing it on your scale models like tanks or airplanes. God bless airplanes. No, don't do that on airplanes. You on tanks, you might get by, but not on airplanes. And but yeah, on dioramas, wood, and even small metal details, like I don't know, railings in dioramas or on ships. Just brush painted chipping fluid, it works perfectly. It leads to these large, flaky chips, which look really nice. And after all, you always end up adjusting them with oil paints or with some subtle brush painted chips. So there's always room for improvement and further tune up of the chipping. So yeah, these planks are now just completely drowning in the chipping fluid. So and I want to make sure that this layer of chipping works as it should. So if you like it or not, I'm gonna wait for the chipping fluid to dry. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts so far. Or I can send this one, and you can pass it along and see it in flesh. There's also another thing that I like to make sure is that the more details you have on the surface, the more chances for exciting effects you get. So that's, for example, why I always make sure to add the splintered ends on the planks and also nail holes. We'll paint those when the chipping is done, but nail holes are very important. And this is also personal preference. Like when you're simulating nails in wood, you can do it either by just punching it with the needle or the way I do it with a small drill bit. Like this is 0.4 millimeters. I know it's too big when we scale it up, but sometimes we need to make things oversized a little so we can see them better and paint them better. So that's very important. Or if you have time and you like a lot of detail, I did it once on one of my buildings that I actually made the nails from copper wire. So I drilled the holes all the way through, and then into each one I superglued a piece of wire. Sometimes it was just slightly protruding like a nail head. Sometimes I bent the wire like a bent nail, and it's a very cool detail. As soon as you start applying washes and rust effects, the nails, even though they are not in scale, they are too big, they look awesome. So the more detail you have, the better the result will be, and the more fun you will have while you are painting this whole thing. That's actually, this is just a very quick job when I was making these small planks. And I just remembered when I blended the oil paints, like, something is missing. Oh yeah, nail holes. So I quickly just drilled them out. I didn't go all the way through. You can still see the white plastic there, but we'll make them work. So they're gonna look nice. And while I'm yapping, the fluid is starting to dry, but look, we still have some pools at the top. So I'm gonna wait because that's really important. Like the fluid should be really dry. Or maybe this plank looks like it's getting dry, so we can focus on this one. That's the other cool thing. Like you can focus on each plank separately. So while it's drying, I'm gonna do this. Again, very thick paint, and let's brush it on like this. No, that's too dry. Nice thick layer. Actually, the thicker it is, the more exciting the chipping will be. And I didn't try all the available acrylic paints that are on the market, but for me personally, these AK third generation acrylics work really well. But I've seen that people had success with Vallejo paints as well. But these are not so rubbery. Like Vallejo is very, it has latex in it, so it's very rubbery. It acts like these gloves, but it works. But these AK paints, they're not, and so the chipping is very nice with them. So those work. But I'm sure if you want to experiment, you can use whatever paints you have. What I obviously wouldn't recommend is to use lacquers or lacquer thinners because then you will just melt everything and that will be it. So I guess that wouldn't be very happy. And again, the first layer is dry, and now I'm gonna layer more yellow tones on top of it, like this. And maybe even the fresh, happy, sunny yellow as well for some extra variation. And I guess that will be it. And now again, the paint needs to solidify so that we don't make a huge mess of everything. I don't know. I always find this to be a very relaxing process because you slap on the chipping fluid, then you take a break. I don't know, you go to make a coffee or have a smoke or watch TV. Then you slap some acrylic paints on top of it like there's no tomorrow, and it's all just very. I don't know. The process feels very natural. Like you're just chilling, vibing with the model, and just having fun. You're not stressing out about that it needs to be perfect. The shapes need to be exactly like in real life. It's just very relaxing. And I know the results might be unpredictable sometimes, but I think that's half of the fun. So let's see how the yellow will chip down. It's still quite fresh. Okay, we'll see. So the first brush stroke is just applying water and we're sort of activating the fluid. And now with the second, it usually starts going down. So I'm being careful, but the paint is still quite fresh. But that's okay. Yeah, it still makes some nice chipping effects. That maybe. Okay, we can slap more yellow on the one, two, the three lines next to it. So again, I will start with the darkest tone, and that's the cool part as well. Like you don't need to follow any rules. You can layer the paints on top of each other as you feel. Uh, so if you feel like doing it the other way, that's perfectly cool as well. And again, here you can see how the wood grain helps us to guide the paint sort of. And again, if I start chipping, the texture will help me as well. But we want some exciting chipping effects, so I'm going to be really heavy with my application. And another cool thing that happens when you apply a lot of paint on top of the chipping fluid, I don't know if it's visible on the projector, but the paint is starting to crackle. Like these really fine crackling effects, and that's really cool as well. That's what happens in real life after all. So it's like that's like a small side effect which helps us. So we'll go like that, and maybe on the next one we will just spice things up and use this sunny yellow, which will then cover with the other paints. Like this maybe. And to make things even more interesting, we're gonna leave this middle one red. Like this one just, I don't know, wasn't painted or was damaged and replaced with a new blank. So we'll leave that one as it is and just cover the rest. This one is also pretty dry. These ones are still kind of wet. This one is also mostly dry. And what about these two? Should I leave them as they are? Just for demonstration purposes? I think so. Okay, so the ones on the right, they seem to be mostly dry, so we will apply the additional tones just to add more visual interest. Yep, that looks pretty good. Now we'll try the yellow. This is the strongest, happiest sun yellow I could find, so I think it will look pretty interesting. And if you're asking like how much can I push this layering, the answer is a lot. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna slap some white on top of this because why not? We want to make it as interesting as possible, right? When each plank is basically its own small model. Maybe like this. What else do we have here? Yeah, these are still wet, so this one, yeah, I'll add some of this on the top, and this sunny yellow flank will be slightly toned down with the other color, and the dark one, maybe like that. Okay, this one is sort of drying up, so yeah, I'll add some here, just a little bit. And so what do we have here? Like when you're applying these different paints on top of it without chipping and using this sort of half dry brush, you're adding more visual texture without reactivating the fluid yet. So the results are gonna be even better, and they don't need to look exactly perfect right now because we are gonna adjust everything with the chipping. This is just slapping on additional tones to have as much visual interest on each plank as possible. Yeah, these ones are still wet. But maybe here. Okay, you know what? I think this will work. I'm not gonna push it any further. And now, now, those ones that are starting to be dry, these can be chipped first. It's also important to use clean water for chipping, and also each time you make a pass, you wipe the paintbrush because the paint will get trapped in the paintbrush, and then you'll just be making a lot of mess. So you need to use clean brush for each pass as you're doing the chipping. So I have a feeling that this one will turn out pretty well. So let's see. Oh yeah, That worked pretty nicely, especially here at the top. Yeah, that's pretty nice. And the other one, the other one is even better. This is what I'm talking about, people. Check it out here. That's what I was talking about and not able to achieve because I was impatient. And also, we can use a smaller brush to have more control and maybe like this. See, this is how real wood looks like when the paint is chipping down. Finally. This one, that one is not so good. But then again, now that I think about it, not all paint just chips down in these large flakes. Sometimes the paint looks like it's getting sort of washed down by water and just generally the weather. I think this one will probably be pretty good as well because it's already dry. So let's see. Okay, there's a lot of paint on the paintbrush, so I'll clean it up and now make one careful pass. Yeah, most of the paint got removed, but again, we are starting to see the paint that was underneath. And this is the magic of these layering effects. Let's see about this one. This one is excellent right here, my friends. This is what I was dreaming about yesterday all night. And what I also like to do sometimes is that when I'm not fully happy with the result, but it's sort of like, yeah, it's on a good path, I will just leave it like this, let the chipping fluid to set, and then I go back to it once again, reactivate it again, and then do some minor adjustments. There's a lot of flexibility in the technique. That one wasn't so good. Um, this one looks pretty dry. Maybe. Yeah, this one is working pretty well. And this one is also dry. Yeah, this one is nice. Not perfect, but pretty nice. Again, we are starting to see the chipped red underneath, which is really exciting. And also, if we accidentally skip on to the next plank, we'll just clean it up real quick to have it nice and tight. And which ones are left? These ones. So that's the first pass, and now the actual shipping. Yeah, I mean, it could be better, but I think it's not the worst thing that you saw today, right? And after all, we are not even close to the finish. And again, the more passes you make, the more pressure you apply, the more chipping will be there. And it's up to you how much paint coverage you want to have on your finished wood. Sometimes the wood looks great when it's completely covered in paint with just tiny chips on the edges, because that's just how it looks on your inner reference image, for example. But I think we're not looking so bad. This looks pretty fine. I mean, these ones are okay. This one is really cool. Also, this one looks pretty nice. And I mean, the first layer looks mighty fine, but that's just because it was the first layer. There was nothing underneath, and now I'm sort of, because I'm rushing, I'm mixing the paints together. But again, I never thought it would lead to these results, so that's also pretty cool. And you know what? Now I'm not gonna abuse these planks anymore. We are going to switch to oil paints again because if things are not working out in your life, you can always count on oil paints to save your day. So it's gonna be these paintbrushes, and I'm gonna put this aside for a while. Tonight I'm gonna have bad dreams about yellow acrylic paints. So now I'm gonna try and save my skin with oil paint. So what are we going to do now? This right now, I mean, it doesn't look like the worst thing in the world, but the whole thing is sort of one huge pile of mess. Like someone vomited these colors on top of the wood. So what we're going to do, we are going to clean things up, or rather tidy them up with washes. And so far, I always used enamel washes for the job because they were just more convenient. But I didn't feel like bringing bottles of enamels onto the airplane. Oil paints were just more convenient, and I mean, at the end of the day, they sort of work the same. So I think we can start with the wash. And the cool thing about oil paints is that you can mix the consistency of the wash to your liking. So I'm pretty much mixing it right here on the piece of cardboard, trying to see what's gonna be the right consistency. And yeah, this looks pretty good. And so what I'm gonna do is apply the wash between the planks. Now, there's a lot of discussion about the right color choice for the pin wash on wooden planks, and some people are giving me hell in the comment section under my videos that why are you using so much of these black washes, like they're too strong. But in my very humble opinion, like, how are you gonna simulate, these super deep shadows between planks? So like with dark brown, it just doesn't make sense. I think black works really well. And as you'll see in a moment, black also works especially well on this aged wood because it just works with those grayish faded tones. And oh, see how it goes on it all on itself? That's magic, my friends, happening in front of our eyes. So I'm gonna do that. And if you're seeing that sometimes the paint spills onto the wood, like when you're weathering scale models, you're trying to avoid this, and clean it up. But here it actually works for our benefits. We'll see that in a moment as I start the cleanup. I also apply it on the nail hole, and again, as I said about the wood grain, the better the wood grain texture, the more fun it is to paint it. Like right now. It just pulls the washes inside, and it's gonna be super, super duper cool once we blend it all together. Like that. And even now, like when you compare these two sides, it's like a night and day difference, right? It looks so much better, and it's just a simple black wash. So again, apply from the top. This is actually fun. I don't know if you are having as much fun as I have, but I'm also observing that the water and chipping fluids, it's starting to dry. And Also, if you suddenly decided like, okay, I'm having fun with these pin washes, but I want more chipping effects on the wood, you can always go back, apply chipping fluid, some acrylic paint, and do it all over again. Like with maybe even with some completely different color. But don't worry, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm already traumatized from the chipping fluid today, so that's not gonna happen. But yeah, this is pretty nice. I'm just gonna quickly finish these panels. That so the nails. I mean, it it's very inviting to bring out all the wood grain texture with the black wash, but it's a trap. You need to be careful with that because if you cover the entire plank with it and then try to blend it, it just turns into this dark grayish mess, and it doesn't look so good anymore. But let's see. I'm sort of inspecting the planks, looking for the deepest wood grain, such as here. That's gonna look nice. And it's also here. This is nice. Oh, it goes all the way down. Okay. And here a little. No, let's not forget about these nail holes right here. Um, like that here. And we're good. So now we can start blending and doing the cleanup. So again, we'll be following the direction of the wood grain and just go like this, sort of removing the excess, but not removing completely. It's more like blending and feathering it and adding to the weathered look of the entire effect. Like the final result, but I mean, this is pretty much with everything in skill modeling and especially weathering. Like the final result is not just about one technique, it's a combination of different effects that work together. And if I spot something exciting, I can add more like this. And those are here. Go like this. Here from the top. That. This one is pretty clean. This one not so much. Okay. I mean, this is one of these super relaxing jobs. Like you have the more complicated part behind you, which is the chipping and all the layering, and now we are just creating this sort of final look, right? But not so quite. This is not entirely the final look, but we're getting there. It's getting all everything has more definition now. Like we can see the individual planks, and now we can take a look at it. Maybe think about it for a while. Yeah, that's one thing that makes me a really slow modeler because my modeling sessions are like 40% painting and 60% looking at it and just thinking about the next step. But I mean, sometimes it's good to just take a step back and evaluate your work and think about the next step. So, for example, now I can use more of the black wash to make this plank look older and darker. and suddenly it stands out more from the rest. We'll clean this up. Yeah, I think now we are pretty good. And while we are still working with the oil paints, we are also gonna add rust tones. And for these, I like to use dark rust and oxide patina. Now this is interesting because Abteilung has specific rust colors, dark rust and light rust. But personally, I don't like light rust as much because it's sort of, I don't know, like creamy, desaturated, and oxide patina is much more vivid, more fresh. And like here it is, that oxide patina. Like doesn't look much like oxide primer at all, but it's very nice. And you might be asking, like, where in the world do I find rust on wood? Well, obviously around nail holes. But even again, it's about observing the weirdest things that you can spot in real life. Like I have a few reference images where there are barn doors made from planks, and you just have a large rust, like a patch that goes across the wood. Like what's going on? You know, maybe in the past the door was laying down and there was some rusty pipe laying on top of it, and then they used it as a barn door. So that's how it got there. So it's always these really interesting details that you can find in real life. Like, for example, me, even yesterday when we were taking a walk, I was snapping pictures of old buildings for inspiration because you never know. You never know what you'll find and when it will come in handy when you're making something interesting. So now I'm applying the rust effects around nails, and orange or this rust color works really well with yellow. Like yellow and even light blue are the best colors when you're blending rust tones on top of them. They just work together really well. So we will make these. This one is still wet, so we'll go here. And also, I'm thinking which one is maybe this one. We can add some rust down there. Here as well. Well, you see, red and orange, not great contrast, but you know, it is what it is. That's that's another part about these wooden techniques that when I can think about the possible color combinations and what color works with which one, and when I'm able to achieve nice contrasts in a natural way, of course. So I'm just gonna lay them down like this. This dark plank is still wet, so it's not even accepting the rust paint. So I'm gonna force it down. And I forgot about this one. This one. Okay, so now I can blend them again. Like 99% of working of your work with oil paints is just about slapping them on the surface and then blending them. So like this. Just enough so it is visible. And if we had more time or there were more details on the wood, we can also have streaks of rust that are going down following the wood grain texture, which is also very exciting. So we will just quickly blend them. Again, this is enamel thinner, and that's the cool thing. Like chipping fluid gets reactivated with tap water, but enamel thinner doesn't do anything to it. So it's perfectly safe to quickly switch between these mediums, and you can have this effect finished like in a couple of hours without any need for varnishing, sealing of the effects, or whatever. Like pretty much the only thing that's holding me back right now is that I'm trying to make it as quick as possible so it doesn't get too boring too fast. But if you make sure that the chipping fluid is dry, the paints are dry, water has evaporated, the enamel thinner has dried, then you're all good. Like there's no accident that can catch you off guard during the process. It all works together. And I mean, again, I'm sort of surprised. Like this isn't like the worst thing in the world. Like it's actually pretty fine. And again, like this plank without any paint, it's sort of gray, boring. We can add more rust because why not, right? Just to add some color variation. And that's another interesting thing. Like I see it often in my country, especially on old houses or big barns when there's a roof that's sort of protecting the wood like this, and this upper part isn't subject to the rain, snow, and the weather. So what happens then is that the lower half of the planks are gray, almost white, but the top part that's covered by the roof, let's pretend that the oil paint is roof. So where you see the shadow, that part is always like this vivid orange. Like it's not affected by the weather, so it has completely different color. So even these effects like that can be done with oil paints. But usually, one time when I was replicating that, I did it again with chipping fluid. I applied rusty acrylics on the top, chipped them down, and then enriched them with these rusty oil paint washes. And but yeah, now I think we are pretty much done with the oil paints, and we will proceed to the final step, which is again with acrylics, but the effect is very refined, and we need a pointy brush and steady hands. I have pointy brushes. I'm not sure about my steady hands right now. And this is gonna be about two paints. One is Deck Tan, which is this universal color that I like to use for this final effect, and the other is white. Uh, well, it's not exactly white, it's off-white, so it's slightly yellowish. But I'm trying to avoid using white. I'm only using it when I'm feeling like super edgy, which I'm not right now, but I'll show you what it does. So, what we are gonna do now is like, I don't even know how to call it. Like, is it chipping or is it highlighting? I'm not sure. It may be both, because we're gonna be doing some fine chips, which are also highlights. We'll basically outline the edges. And where should I start? Maybe here. Do you see it on the projector? Like it's very subtle, but it makes quite a lot of difference. Like this, and it works especially well on the splintered ends at the bottom. Like it completely brings them to life, like that. And also, because I don't have the actual nails in nail holes, I like to do this sort of small trick where I outline, highlight the bottom edge of the nail hole like this. Makes it look more three-dimensional. And I'll also show you what the white paint does to the effect. That is more striking. Like that. And this is also where it's important to turn the piece around so you can comfortably outline the other side. So the way I usually proceed is I finish all the edges from one side, then flip it over and finish the other side. Yeah, now we sort of can observe the final result. Again, the lower edges, with sort of very fine like chipping, like that. Again, clean the nail holes. Like that. And we can push even further if we want to. Yeah, like this final part, it's sort of it's more mechanical than creative, but we need to be careful and not overdo the effect, especially if we are using white, because then the whole piece can suddenly become very cold, and it can also overpower the previous effects, and that's never cool. So this is like the final, the final adjustment that makes each plank look really sharp and clearly defined. Again, especially at the bottom, but the paint is not really dry here, so it's sort of mixing together. Yeah, this very subtle chipping or whatever it is, chipping slash highlighting, I don't know, but it makes a lot of difference. And it's kind of interesting to see that we started with the sloppiest techniques that you can possibly imagine. Like we're just slapping the paints on top of each other with these big old brushes. And then we switched to washes, some blended rust, and we are ending with this very precise technique. So the more we proceed towards the end, the more refined the techniques themselves become. Yeah, now it works really well at the bottom. Like you can see the difference, right? Like the splintered ends are much more visible now. And of course, one thing I didn't really bring, but it's also plays a huge part, is moss. Like most of the time, the wood has some, greenish stains and tint, especially at the bottom where moisture is mostly present when it rains, and that works really well. And for that, I sometimes use like olive green oil paint, or even these specific enamel paints that are called slimy grime, either the light one or the dark one, or both. and that's one of the very exciting final effects that make the wood look like it's the real thing. Yep, like that. I'll try to highlight all the nail holes if possible. Yeah, not all of them are cooperating because there's still some wet wash inside of them. But yeah, I think you can sort of see the point. And because I'm the type of guy who don't knows when to stop, I'm also gonna do the other side because otherwise I won't be satisfied with myself. So I'm just gonna do it really quickly and maybe we will find some other opportunities to make them look more interesting in a few places. Like here, for example. Like this is one of the things I really like about not just this technique, but pretty much every technique that's out there, that the more time you spend on your model, the more it tells you what it needs from you. Like the more you spend on each of these small parts, you get to learn them better, you know their intricacies, and with each technique you're getting the final picture in your mind. Like, yeah, I'm proud. Like, at some point, you have a clear picture of what do you want the final result to be. Of course, it's much easier when you have reference images, so you have a clear vision. But that's not always the case. Yeah, so I think that about does it. So, what do you think? Was it good or should it be better? I'll just on it. I'll just prop it like this. Is it nicely visible? Maybe try slightly zooming in on the final result, if possible.
It's not easy, but we can.
Or put it closer.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I will pass it along.
A little bit closer.
Closer, closer. Yeah, it's slightly glossy in a few places because it's still the enamel thinner and chipping fluid that I didn't fully remove. But I mean, that's the gist of the technique and roughly the result. Again, it all depends on what colors you choose. But personally, when it comes to my models, I like to choose the most vivid colors I can find. Like light blue, really like vivid green, and yellow. Like those are my favorites. Like orange is also cool, but pale blue is especially nice, or even like turquoise and colors like that. Okay, so I think now I will pass it along so people can see it better with their own eyes.
Thank you.
Because nothing beats the real thing.
Can I ask something?
Of course.
Stick concrete.
Again?
Can we use stick in concrete walls?
Concrete? Yeah, sure. When you have like painted concrete with peeling paint, absolutely. But when it comes to the actual painting of the concrete, I like to use a slightly different method, and that by using sponge, like pieces of kitchen sponge, and different sandy paints that I stipple on top of each other. It's again for the concrete
with acrylics.
with acrylics. Yes. One of them actually, I have a few of them here. Like I like to use. It's not dark sand. It's called light earth, and deck tan is one of my favorite colors for concrete. And I like to finish with again off white, but in very small amounts. Like those are just highlights for the concrete. And again, moss, like green moss, works really well on concrete as well. And so basically, actually, I did it in one of my videos with the Factory Ferdinand an oxide primer. I have a small patch of concrete at the base, and I stipulate it with these acrylics. Then I apply the black wash, and then I bring out the texture again with off-white with a fine paintbrush. And yeah, that's where I did also the chipping paint on the concrete as well. I had this yellow strip there, and yeah, chipping fluid, thick layer of paint, and then just large flat paintbrush, and you just scrape it down, and it works like a dream on concrete. Yeah, great point. Concrete is also another very nice surface to work with because it has a lot of texture and a lot of randomness. It's very cool. And another example when paint chips down in these large flakes. It's not fine chipping like we see on steel or on armor models. It's these large pieces that just fall off. And that's also very cool. Yeah, so
We should take them up if you are done.
yeah, I'm pretty much done. I also need to apologize because I didn't think about the drying times. And I know that watching paint dry is boring. It's not a phrase in English for no reason. So I kind of didn't think about that. But
It's okay, you did great.
I did my best.
Now you switch technique. Must be sure.
Yeah.
You apply this technique. I must start.
Oh, yeah. I was shocked as well when I tried it for the first time because I mean I bought the book where I learned about it, and I was like, no way, there's no way like it's gonna be this easy, but it actually is.
Yeah, I couldn't clear my eyes still.
Yeah. And especially like for all these years, I always struggled with the basics, like how to make the base coat for the faded wood. And I mean, I have my own paints which I use, so I tried these, and yeah, it's like these three oil paints, and that's all you need, and it's perfect. So yeah, sometimes it's like we don't even think about it, and suddenly we are like, wow, like it's this easy.